Do you wish that all things wealth and finance were much easier to understand and not presented by a bunch of beige cardigan-wearing geeks? Welcome to the Clever Investor Podcast, where we're dishing up the easiest to understand finance program served in bite-sized chunks, so your brain will thank you as your knowledge grows. Hosted by the brilliant Owen Taylor, a multiple award-winning expert with a glorious knack for explaining the complex world of wealth in the simplest of ways.
Hello, clever investors, and welcome to another show. I have been teaching adults how to do things this is my 29th year. And over the last 20 years, I've taught people how to invest in property, finance to do with property, and lots of things like that I love. I regularly stand up in front of groups, and when we're talking about investing, I tell people to not get emotional about buying an investment property. I tell them that you need to fall in love with the home that you're going to buy, but don't get emotional about the investment property. It is a business decision, because as soon as we start getting emotional, I tell people that that's when you're going to start making silly decisions. Then my perspective on this changed a while ago when I read a blog article written by somebody that I've worked with now for many years, and also, like me, has a background in broking and runs the client services department at Blue Wealth Property. And she made me think about it all. Our guest in the studio today is Fiona McGovern, and I'm going to put a link up for the actual article, but you wrote a piece that's called Getting Emotional About Your Investment Property.
I did, and thanks for having me, Owen.
Tell me then, why did you get emotional about buying your investment property, and why does it actually make sense?
Look, I get emotional at everything. If you see me watching the last episode of any of the Bake Off shows, I cry. It's just who I am.
I've got to point out to everybody as well that Fiona is a trained chef and she's an amazing baker as well. And she bakes when she's under stress. So I keep her under a constant amount of stress.
You try your best to do that, yes.
So why I stand in front of, and you've seen me, present to, many, many people over the years. What am I doing wrong?
You're not doing anything wrong. You're right, and so am I, which sounds a bit weird that you say don't get emotional, but I say to get emotional. But there's two different things here. So what I'm saying is get emotional about, the fact that you've bought a property. You've achieved something that not many people have achieved, and it's something to be very excited about. And excitement is an emotion, but you also want to be proud of what you've done, and you want to tell all your friends. So I want you to share that. I'm excited for you. So when you come to me with your property purchase, I'm the most excited person in this business for you, and I'll tell you that. But I don't want you to get emotional about where the toilet roll holder is, because that's not really relevant to the property, and tenants aren't going to care about where the loo roll holder is, where the towel rail is, how big the kitchen sink is. So don't get emotional about those things, because they're things that don't really matter in the long term. But get excited about what you've done and be emotional about that and be proud of what you've achieved.
When should this emotion come into buying an investment property then?
Right from the start.
Right from the very start?
Yep. Right from the very start.
And I've been telling everybody for years, just treat it like a business.
Well, it is a business, and, you do need to treat it like a business, but why can't you be proud of what you've achieved? Why can't you be excited about what you've achieved? They're both emotions. Why not embrace that?
I think some of it is a little bit of tall poppy syndrome, probably in Australia, in that I know even amongst my group of friends, having run my finance business for years, and they all knew what I do. But it took a lot of courage for them to ever approach me about having a conversation of how do they grow their wealth. And I always took it, and I still do now, take it as a great honour when friends and family members as well want to talk about finance. And a lot of them want to keep it undercover. They don't want to tell other people. They don't want to sort of share that kind of victory thing there as well. So do you think that some of this keeping the emotion down is because people don't want to show off?
Look, I think it is. And I think that, sometimes we are scared to share how we feel, or we're scared to share the realities of our life. But most of our friends are not actually going to judge us for feeling that way or for what we're doing. And most of our friends are going to be excited for us if we tell them what we've achieved.
So this is becoming emotional then about it's not so much the actual property, it's the fact that we're achieving something.
It's definitely not about the property, Owen. It's definitely not, because you can't let your emotions drive where you buy or what you're actually buying. That needs to be, you need to use your head more for that. You need to be sensible about, how you're making those decisions. And that's one of the great things about Blue Wealth is it's research based. That's not an overly emotional part of the business, but those things are important. They are just as important as getting excited about it. So the business side, you have to keep your business head on, and that's where you're buying, what you're buying. But then the excitement still has to be there with the pride and pride of what you've achieved.
So we do agree, and I don't have to change that. You don't get emotional about the actual, let's call it the business process of selecting the property, of the numbers side of things. But it's good to have that excitement then about building this business around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Please don't change your presentation, because what you say is actually really important as well. But, you also display that excitement with what you do. When you present, you can see that excitement in what you're doing. That's an emotion too, Owen, sorry. And I think that what you say in these events and what you teach when you're presenting is just as important. And, telling people to keep those emotions down when it comes to making those business decisions is actually really important.
Well, it does stop us making silly decisions at the beginning, but then also during the process, we're not making decisions based on fear. We're not jumping at things. And I know, we sit right next to each other in the office on a daily basis, and I hear your conversations a lot with people, and quite naturally, people worrying about things that haven't happened, will probably never happen, and that's quite simply because they've just never done this before. So it's all part of having the right team around you. And my favourite saying, knowledge is power. So this emotion that you can go through should be for all the right reasons. Now, it's obviously worked for you and your husband, because you've got a 21-year-old daughter that's got an investment property. Right now, when I was 21, I was getting drunk and falling over. That was all I really sort of did with my life back then. So do you think that this emotion, this excitement that you have with it, do you think that it's actually got part to do with your daughter at 21 buying her first property?
I think that it's actually a bit of both. It's the business head and the emotion, to be honest. She sits on the couch with me watching Bake Off, and she, hands me the tissues. And, that excitement of us buying an investment property has gone down to our kids. And yes, that contributed to her wanting to buy a property, but also the fact that we are rational about it, and we're thoughtful and consider our options, meant that she sat back and thought very carefully about what she was doing and could she afford it. So she really did put that sensible hat on when she was doing it as well. I can tell you the pride that I feel for the fact that my daughter has purchased her first investment property. I can't even describe that. It's such an amazing feeling. So I think it's a lot of both.
This is a loaded question because I know all the answers to this, but she's 21 now. When did the conversations around money, when did you talk as a family freely about money and wealth and
I don't think that we've ever not talked about it. Our dinner tables conversation is pretty intense and pretty varied, and we talk about the economy, we talk about politics, so it's always been part of their world. And I'm a big believer that our schools probably don't set our kids up for their financial future as well as they could, because they don't talk about real life, they don't talk about tax, they don't talk about superannuation, whereas our dinner table that's always been a topic of conversation. So from a very young age, they were, it's just been part of their world. And then when my husband and I bought our first investment property, it was a pretty crazy time. We had the contracts issued, and a week later my husband had a heart attack, and I'm sitting there thinking, can I actually do this? Can we do this? Oh my God, what am I doing?
And he's okay.
He's okay.
He's okay.
He is okay. And our kids were teenagers, but they were part of that conversation. It was part of their world as well, and that was important because it's a life lesson that they need to, they need to be involved in that. We didn't shelter them from any of it. So to them, it was just part of life, was to go on that journey and buy an investment property, and set yourself up for future.
And the reason why I brought that up is that I think it's actually by having these open conversations, by having these dinner table conversations around it. And also, we're fortunate. We've both got a background in finance, so we can answer a lot of these questions. It's okay for a parent to not know the answers and to go out and seek it. And seek it. We've had quite a few clients where they've come as families to my presentations, to the events that we've put on. There's even a family and kids one that we do as well. And I know your daughter had been at that years ago as well.
Yeah, and look, that's one of the great things about working at Blue Wealth, is that my kids are exposed to this education that is absolutely incredible. Most kids are not exposed to this, and the fact that from a fairly young age they started to learn all of this. They started to learn about buying an investment property, about superannuation. And it really wasn't just, the dinner table is a big part of it, but they're exposed to it with what I do for work as well.
So Sarah's not here. You can answer for her. Is she emotional about buying this investment property?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah?
Yeah. She shows everyone, on her app what she's bought. She tells people about it. She's, I think, a bit scared in some respects because it's something that she's never done before. And I think that that's quite normal to have that level of fear, but she doesn't jump at shadows with it. She, when she has those moments that she feels a little overwhelmed, she takes a step back, she has a conversation, and, we walk through, what it looks like from a financial perspective. She settles down and gets excited again about it. She's saving really hard. She's really sensible about it, and she just, sitting back, saving, waiting for it to all happen, and have a tenant and be able to say that she's one of those few Australians that owns an investment property.
The 8.7% of Australia. So she still has the emotion of fear, even though her mother is in the position that you're in. You're the head of client services there. You deal with all of this.
Yeah.
So she's still allowed to go through that emotion. It's okay to have that fear.
I think it's okay to have that fear as long as you're not jumping at shadows. But I think that, fear is a natural part of what we go through every day. If you open a newspaper, if you jump onto a website that is run by one of the newspapers, if you jump onto social media, there's a lot of noise out there that can help, add to that fear. And it's about taking a step back from that and, almost compartmentalising it and realising what it actually is, and then looking at what the reality is, and just relaxing from those fears, because most of the time it's something that you can overcome, and once you've overcome that, you can head back into the excitement.
Thank you for coming in and talking with me today about this. You have actually changed the way that I pitch things towards people now. I won't be quite as cold-hearted with it, but I do thoroughly agree with you. You don't get emotional about the actual property, get emotional about the excitement of growing your wealth and achieving something as well.
Thanks for having me, Owen.
Thank you. I'll see everybody again next week for another edition of the Clever Investor Podcast.
You have been listening to the Clever Investor Podcast, proudly sponsored this week by Blue Wealth Property. Are you ready to start a new investment journey? Get in touch with the industry leaders, Blue Wealth Property. Blue Wealth have a proven track record in using research to identify growth markets, and Blue Wealth have supported thousands of Australians to buy the right property in the right market at the right time. Go to bluewealth.com.au.